Good afternoon. This is the Public Works and Finance Committee meeting for May 23rd, 2022. I'm Gina Terusio. To my left, far left is Bill Belknap, our city supervisor. To my left is Maureen Laughlin, and my right is Haley Lewis, counselors for our city as well. First item on our agenda is the approval of the Public Works and Finance Committee meeting minutes of May 9th, 2022.
Look good.
You look good.
Okay, they look good, Bill.
You look good, Lori. Oh, she's not in.
Oh, yeah. The second item is our Transportation Alternatives Program South Main Pedestrian Underpass Update, State and Local Agreement. Good Lord, let's add some more words to that title next time.
Well, we actually ran out halfway through.
You ran out of words, you just started adding more. This is Nate Sir and Elisa Anderson. Hello to both of you.
Good afternoon.
What do you have for us?
Wrong one.
Well, for this item, we actually don't have a presentation.
Oh, all right. Boy, I was
And
excited there for a
Nate's
minute.
going to go over the project and then I'll go over the actions.
So this is it's the same project that was presented back in January. It's the underpass, similar to what was done at the Steiner White underpass for Highway 8. This would be under US 95 from the Identity property over to the Gritman property there.
Nice.
Awesome.
After we had already presented to the committee, we got a call from the TAP committee, and they said they would like to increase our grant from 500,000 to $1 million.
And you accepted that?
That's just too bad.
I had to ask, but
Open it.
so that's
thanks,
what
Taylor.
that's what the update represents. It's no change to the scope of the project, no change to the intent. It's just instead of having nearly 500,000, we'll have nearly $1 million worth of funding.
Yeah.
So what we have today for you is a new agreement. And then we use the prior existing resolution that it didn't have numbers in it, so it still fit this. So today we're looking at approval to execute the updated state local agreement for design and construction. And accompanied by the previous resolution 2022-08.
Either one of you have a problem with a little bit more money to do a project?
You think, let me give a minute.
Yeah.
Let's just think about it for a little bit. Okay.
Because it
I
means
thought
less-
about it long enough.
Less money from the city and less money from the urban renewal agency, right?
Mhm.
We hope.
Well,
Yeah.
The
really when
match,
the bids come
so
Okay.
it's a little bit different. Maybe I'll just back up a little bit.
Yeah.
So our match is 7.34%
in. Period.
of the total
Yeah.
award that they give us. So I don't remember exactly what the match was previously, but I think this increases it a little bit.
Well, actually, the project cost exceeded. So
Yeah.
we had more money into the project.
That's right.
That far exceeded. We had nearly $500,000 into the project between both the city and the urban renewal agency. I was being a little bit facetious, and we hope it is, with the
Yeah.
current bidding climate.
Right.
Until we know what the ultimate project cost is at bid opening, we won't really know what the entirety of our match is if we're required to make up any additional funding. But certainly this is very positive to see LTAC
Right.
allocate another $500,000 to the project.
So on that number, the city's match is this, or the split 50-50, the city and the URA's match is 78,788. And with the signing of the agreement, we're required to make a deposit of $7,879.
I'm still not completely bothered by that.
Me neither.
I think it's a good thing.
I'm not either. And assuming, we'll see it again pending any bids that come back our way, right? Assuming
Yes.
it doesn't.
Yeah, traditionally, so what typically happens with an LTAC project like this, we'll go through the design, we'll have an updated cost estimate. And then before LTAC bids the project, the city will have to provide its match up front, potentially any additional money should the estimate grow beyond the current estimate. That generally has to be in LTAC's hands before they bid the project. And then after opening, if it's beyond the prior estimate and funding available, then they'll come back to the city or potentially LTAC, and they have in the past, may find additional funding that's available to help fill the gap.
Good.
So they did
be
that
good
on the
too.
3rd Street LSIP project where they came in with some additional funding, which was very helpful as well. So it just, there'll be a process where we'll have to provide our match for construction prior to bid award, and then we'll just have to see what the bid numbers come back.
Yeah.
as.
Looks great to me.
Since this is a resolution, it's already an approved one though, so this could be consent.
And all resolutions can be consent. Ordinances
ordinances.
cannot.
Okay.
But yes, this is just referencing a prior approved resolution, so there's no need for this to go on regular agenda.
I say consent then, good. Okay. Thanks, guys. Don't go anywhere. Our next item, again with Elisa and Nate, is a Leading Idaho Local Bridge Program grant application.
Well, we just heard about this and are pretty excited about it, but I don't have a ton of information. So I know you'll be very disappointed to hear it's going to be a short slideshow. So just a little bit on the program background and then the bridge location before Lisa goes into some of the more technical stuff. So the goal of the Leading Idaho Local Bridge program is to replace a third of the local bridges. So that'd be bridges that are not on the highway system that are either poor condition or posted condition, meaning they essentially have a reduced load on that particular bridge due to either damage or cross section. So for the city of Moscow, our only eligible bridge is the Sand Road Palouse River Drive Bridge. All of our other bridges are either in fair condition and none of them are load posted. So that is actually a good thing,
Yeah.
but this is our only option.
Give me a landmark that's by.
So off of Palouse River Drive past like Appaloosa, as you just continue right before you switch into the county there.
Perfect.
Before the ARB or after the ARB.
Yes.
It's
Thank
and
you.
Lord knows it needs it. I've seen better days.
So this is one-time funding. It was authorized by Senate Bill 1359 up to $200 million. There is no maximum grant limit and no local match requirement. So that's another thing that we're pretty excited about. It's a pretty quick turnaround. The applications are due June 8th, but the applications are it's a fairly compact thing. And about 75% of the scoring is already done by LTAC through the bridge inspection forms. So that is another very positive thing. This, I had to check several times because this is the dashboard for the eligible bridges. And I did check all of Moscow and it's our only one. So that'll give you also a firm in that location there. And then this is a picture of it. And I would encourage you, if you can go onto Google Earth, if you keep backing up, that truck turns out so you get a good impression of what it would be like to try to pass on that bridge. But it's definitely a need. And then I guess we'll hold the questions until after Lisa's done.
Just one thing too, that we mentioned in the CCSR, this is a program where basically LTAC has it designed and built. Other than being part of the project, that we don't have to put money into it or anything. So that's a lot of burden time off of our engineering department. So with this grant request, they have us submit the application, which needs to be signed by the mayor. And then they also have a memorandum of understanding. And there also is a resolution. However, I missed it going through the proofing process. That what you have in your packet is actually the draft resolution that they provide to us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if this attachment was put in there or not. It says attachment B. However, I missed having that included and retyped by and re-prepared by our legal department. So when this comes forth, it will need, and I think Bill will explain what he'd like to do here. It will have a resolution attached to it also. So there'll be 3 things that will go with the application.
And then it'll come before council.
Correct. And it just be
Fantastic.
just putting the memorandum of understanding language into our standard resolution format. So we would anticipate that would still come on consent. And if any council member has any concern about it, they certainly could ask that it
Okay.
be removed from the agenda. But our agenda will be fairly lengthy coming up on June 6th because we'll have all the ARPA and small business. Also, given the fact that it's just a formula resolution that will be in there that doesn't change any of the information presented to the council today, we'd like to go ahead and move this forward on consent if we could.
I'm comfortable with that.
Me too.
The one other item that I just to bring to the council's attention, so if you can visualize that area along the Ballfield property, the river's on the south side of Palouse River Drive, and then it swings and crosses to get to the north, which is the bridge we're talking about today. It then loops around the residence, and then it crosses the road again, and then continues on to the west on the south side of Sand Road. That second bridge crossing in a fairly short distance is the North Lake Tahoe County Highway District's bridge, and they have been awarded a grant to replace that bridge structure. There were discussions about possibly rerouting the South Fork of the Blues River to keep it south of the road and have a singular bridge crossing. We don't know if that's going to be likely feasible or achievable based on environmental permitting, wetland displacement. It could be very complicated, and there's a rock knob kind of right there that would have to be removed, or a channel would have to be blasted through. But if that potentially is feasible, and they're approaching they just started the design work on the county's bridge. The first phase of it is kind of a feasibility study. Is it possible to do this? LTAC was interested in the possibility of decommissioning 2 bridges and replacing it with only
Yeah.
one. That just removes a bridge off the system that has to be replaced in the future. So we're kind of still waiting for the outcome of that.
Mhm.
But should that not be deemed feasible, then we're left with this bridge, which is why we felt to be appropriate to make the application. If somehow it does work out that rerouting it and having a single bridge, we don't necessarily have to take the funding, or it may potentially somehow funding could be consolidated because it will be more costly.
Bigger bridge, right?
It'll be could be a potentially bigger bridge, potentially harder to construct, given that you're building a whole new channel,
Yeah.
and dealing with all of the drainage that is associated with that. So, but should that not be feasible, we'd like to be in the best position we can to receive the funding to replace this bridge that is our responsibility. So I just want to make the council aware that should something change in the future, you're aware that still is out there as well. That hasn't been brought to conclusion. But with this influx of one-time funding and that being a load-posted bridge, we want to make the application so we can be in line. Should that project not move forward, we'll be in a good position to be able to replace this structure.
How do our engineers feel about consolidating into one bridge and doing that rerouting? Is that, in their mind, is that a feasible thing?
That's what we're waiting to hear. So certainly everything's feasible. The concern more is about environmental permitting, which is not necessarily our area of responsibility. And so that is really the concern and the question about actually, separating that portion of the river off, rerouting it
Yeah.
of that degree that could be difficult from a permitting perspective, but
Is that
that's what
DEQ?
LTAC and Alta is, I think, the engineering firm doing that feasibility assessment. We should hear something within the next 3 to 4 months would be my guess.
So what I'm hearing is and I also would hope that if we came to the point where we needed to hand money back, I would assume that the LTAC would be delighted that we are being mindful consumers of grant dollars, and I'm sure they have no shortage of options to reallocate it to. So yeah, I appreciate the context. I think given the nature of the timeline of the grant program and everything else, it doesn't make sense for us to not move forward, assuming that both bridges will stay as both bridges are.
And LTAC's aware. They're managing that
Alright.
feasibility study project. They're aware of both
Yeah.
situations, and they aren't certain that it's going to be feasible either. So I think everybody's aware of the situation.
Nate, would you throw the slide of the bridge up again, please? Okay, so my question is, you make the bridge wider, but the road isn't any wider, right? Just makes, because I guess you can pull off on the shoulder if the car's coming.
Well, and ideally, what we haven't got quite the details of the design, but ideally we'd like to incorporate pedestrian facilities, because this bridge doesn't currently have any pedestrian facilities in
Oh,
its
okay, thank you.
configuration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we widened it, approximately 12 feet, we'd be able to get sidewalks.
Nice.
So
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you're replacing bridge structures like this, you are widening that bridge structure to meet the future roadway section you anticipate to be there. So I'm sure we would be looking at our standard roadway section for either a minor arterial or collector that would have travel lanes, bike lanes, and pedestrian facilities. Even though the road itself may not be there, you oftentimes see highway bridge structures that are much wider than the roadway that currently exists, and that's just to avoid that future cost of expansion of that structure.
Makes sense to me. Thank you.
Awesome.
So please note that I will make sure that the resolution is included in the packet
Okay.
prior to going to council.
Good.
And then you'll be able to see the entire package.
Okay. Awesome.
Perfect.
All right. We like that on consent. Bill, that's
Consent
a
is good.
good plan.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks,
Thank you
guys.
so much.
Appreciate it. Our next item is the Andrew Becker Memorial Public Artwork. Megan Cherry.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you update us by email if we hear from one way or the other about the feasibility?
Yeah, yep.
Hi, Megan.
Hello, thank you for having me today. I'm so excited to be presenting about this project today because this one's been a long road and we're really excited to be at this point of showing you some designs for the project. So this is just a quick review. I know this is a project that's been in front of council multiple times over the last year and a half, but just to say this is a donation that came in from a family. They wanted to invest in a piece of permanent public art within the city's collection. And with the key themes really aligning with Andrew Becker's life and core values, those being accessibility, human rights, inclusion, compassion, and courage. The site that was identified for this project was right there at the corner in front of the transit center, which is appropriate for multiple reasons, some of which we'll see in the artist statement about the work here in a little bit. So what if you go to visit the sculpture garden right now, you'll notice we have 4 new sculptures that are part of our annual program. They were installed last week, so that's pretty exciting. And then the one plinth on the corner. Mic seemed to just
That
turn
did
off.
stop.
The plinth on
Stop.
the corner is currently empty, and that is because we're anticipating installation of this sculpture later on in the year. So just a quick rundown of this project timeline. I included the entire thing because we've seen dates stack up and up and up. We've learned a lot. This has been a new type of project for the arts department with a donation coming in and also with a new method of working with an artist. So I know council is very familiar with the setup for this project at this point. Here's where we are today. We're at May 23rd here at Public Works Finance. We anticipate this going to City Council on the 6th, at which point, if council approves the project to move forward, the artist will move into fabrication and head towards an installation in October, which would beautifully line up with the opening of our art walk season as well. So we're hoping for that to all work out. Quick review of our project revisions that happened during this year. Our project budget increased from $5,000 to $8,000. Of that, $5,000 dollars were provided by the donors, and then $3,000 came from existing appropriated funds through the city to support the materials that are part of the city requirements. I think we see this with all of the projects coming to council right now, is that the material budgets are just higher for across the board.
Yeah.
We released we released an RFP in 2 rounds for artists in surrounding states, and ultimately did not receive submissions, and so went forward with a direct hire of J. Casey Doyle. Casey's studio practice really sets him up to be perfect for this project. He's also somebody who has been an integral part of the sculpture garden in our annual program. So this was a really, really good fit for a lot of reasons. So moving forward, now we're finally at the point where we're looking at designs, which is a wonderful place to be. Casey's agreement with design asked for 2 different design options. And so this is design option 1. And both of these designs are indicate aluminum. He's also let us know that he may make a shift to stainless steel. Either way would be fine for us in terms of material longevity. So it'll be either aluminum or stainless, and then the latter component would be made from bronze. And then this is design option 2. When Casey presented this to the donor, he made a recommendation, in fact, for this first design option. And it's something that the donor recommended as well. And I wanted to share a few of his thoughts about that. they're very similar in subject matter. They both contain clouds and a ladder. But there are some elements with this particular design that he felt aligned with the project description a little bit more. In this text on the screen, I put in bold the words that are really important in the project description. And so first, Casey made a note about how the location relates to access, and that's really why the donor fell in love with this site to begin with, is that it's a place that's not only on the UI campus, which is a very important place for her family, but it's also all about access and transit. Casey brought in this idea of higher education as a point of access to multiple perspectives, ways of thinking, and so that adds another layer that seems pretty rich. He also mentioned a lot about clouds and how they belong to everyone and no one all at once, and that their borders are open, flexible, and ever changing, and related that to the qualities of human rights. And this idea of stacking or reliance on community, that we see three clouds together, that there's a mutual benefit and support, and those are qualities that can't exist in a community without compassion. That was an idea that was really important to Andrew Becker. And so Casey wanted to bring that into the content of his work. Ladders speak to progression, but they also speak to courage. For anybody who's ever climbed an extension ladder, there's a moment about that. Right? 6-foot step ladder is one thing, but we start to rise through levels of life and or a process, or progressing through a career, or progressing through areas of community advocacy. There's some pretty serious courage involved in that. Finally, and speaking here to the reason that I think both the donor and Casey were excited about this design, is that the open spaces inside these clouds are an inclusive moment when the viewer could really come and get inquisitive about what's happening inside that cloud, and they're invited to come in and look, and they'll see this ladder climbing through the cloud. And there's also the potential for sunlight and shadow. Snow is going to build up in there, and it's going to be beautiful, right? So that openness, that open space, Casey was really spoke to it more beautifully than I can, but he said that it really felt like an inclusive moment to have that open space. So it's a little bit about project themes specifically related to this design. So the donor and MAC recommendation would be for this design. Just one thing to note about ribbon clouds, that's a working title. Casey's going to think about this as he's in the fabrication process over the summer, pending council approval, and we'll work with a final title for the sculpture later on. And staff recommendation echoes both the donor and the MAC, and that we recommend the completion of the artwork commission with J. Casey Doyle to create ribbon clouds for installation in October 2022. With that.
That's really cool.
Questions?
Any
Patience,
questions?
patience, perseverance. We got it.
I got nothing.
Okay, as much as I'd like this on regular, but I think with the big hairy agenda on Monday, it's better to put it on.
Whichever you like.
We could do consent, but could we ask like the city to do a shout out on social media or something and
Yeah,
highlight
maybe.
the
How are we
project in
doing
a
that?
different
Sure.
way?
Yeah, the intent is, so I've been hanging back a little bit on doing our PR for the Sculpture Garden, because I knew that
Yeah,
when we
this
do
is
our press
coming.
release about the annual program, there might be questions about
sure.
that one empty plinth.
Right.
So my intent was to wait for this to go through council, and then I'll do a press release and social media posts for the Sculpture Garden as a site with both annual project and with this design. So
Right.
I could do that.
I think we are definitely, I'm hearing happy noises, so let's put it on consent.
Sounds good.
And
We'll do that.
That's excellent.
We will spread
The
the
other
word.
way to do it is just to actually have a very short abbreviated thing that said, this is what it is, and there's just one little picture
Yeah,
up there.
yeah, I know that part. I'm thinking we're going to have some conversations about the grants that I think we need to save as much time as we can for. So
I think you're right.
do a good post and I'll look for it and we'll do some sharing. How about that?
That's great. Thank you
Awesome.
so much.
Megan,
Thanks,
thank you.
Megan.
Okay.
Congratulations.
I think it is our final item.
It
Is the approval of the liquor license and request for waiver for NEAT. Mr. Belknap.
So a little bit of background.
Mhm.
So there is a new bar, and I think it's A&T LLC is the owner of a liquor license. They're proposing to open up a small bar that they're calling NEAT. It'd be located on the second floor of the building that currently houses Mingles. Apology. And so that building is located within 300 feet of a public school, or actually of a location where church services have been held. So underneath Idaho Code 23913, it does prohibit the retail sale. So it's on-site premise consumption of alcohol within 300 feet of a public school, church, or other place of worship, except with the approval of the governing body of the municipality. So any bar or other establishment that wants to open a location in that distance to one of those uses has to receive the city council's approval. We had some conversation with the state of Idaho regarding whether a transitory use, where a property has a other principal use, but maybe they make a gym available for church services. Does that meet the definition underneath the state law as a place of worship or a church? They said that would take some time to sort through. They'd have to send it to their AG's office. And it would take a fair amount of time for them to get to a definitive answer. They did recommend that if there was any question, that certainly it doesn't hurt to have the council provide that waiver. And that way the business can proceed in getting their state license approved. So that's what we're here today. There's two actions on your list today. The first is to recommend approval of the waiver of the alcohol within 300 feet of a place of worship or provide staff further direction. And the second is to actually act on the alcohol license and restaurant certification for NEAT conditioned upon passing of inspections, background checks, and approval of licenses in the state and county. So the waiver is something we'd have to address first, and then moving on with the license approval as a second action.
Which is that step two something we do for most any?
For
Yeah,
any
usual-
new license. So renewals are just ministerial. They're handled by the clerk, but any new liquor, beer, wine license
two
has to be
usually
approved by the
happens,
city
okay.
council for the first time. Correct.
So the person, they don't have one right now, because I thought I read something about it, that we were under a time crunch on this one.
They have a license, but there's a certain time period by which you have to have the license in use at a business.
Right.
You can't just hold on to them. So
So they got a
that's-
license from the state, and now they want to apply that license to a
they
specific
have the
location.
liquor license, correct, but they don't have the license to serve at a particular location.
Okay. And this gives them the permission to do it in that location.
Right. Well, and there's, they have to obtain the license approval from the state. And usually all applicants start with the state because that's the first entity that typically reviews it. And then it goes down to the county and city as the last two entities that issue the license. The state became aware that there were services and the city had a question to make sure that if we needed to grant a waiver, they did recommend we go ahead and do so just to cover the bases.
Okay. And we have heard from at least one of the churches. that they're in-
There's only one within 300 feet.
Okay, so
that's,
what's the King's? You mentioned King's Cross Church. Is that the same as the New St. Andrews? They're two listed, both New St. Andrews and King's Cross Church have been invited. So is King's Cross Church what is happening then in the,
honestly, I don't know. That Lori has been working on it. I
Okay.
heard that Christ Church was holding services in the new
I
St.
think they may
Andrews
be
building.
holding services as
King's Cross
Okay.
Church?
Cross. I think
Yeah.
King's Cross is a subsidiary or a related branch, if I remember right. So,
Okay,
Okay.
so
So
we
we have
have,
reached out to the owner of the building in which the services are being held, and they've provided a letter of support to the
Okay.
application today.
what do you think? Any questions, anything like that?
I'm just fascinated by the liquor license process in this state. And so nothing related specifically to this, I guess. If it is a new liquor license, I am sure it was I hear it's like a 30-year waiting period for the
Right.
new batch to come out. So like way to go for landed one in town. We've got this email from New St. Andrews recommending they are in favor, and I am comfortable with what I know, recommending approval of the waiver.
So what is it you don't know?
Or I guess I'm really curious to see what the step 2 process looks like. So I used to live above Mingles back in the day, and so a couple of those office spaces, they're pretty small. So I'm like picturing like what that capacity is going to look like and things like that. And I'm excited to see how the space will be repurposed. And so I guess my lingering pause was because I'm excited to see what the process, go through the motions of what it looks like for step 2, but I am comfortable recommending approval of the waiver
So
as I verbally process this.
is
Sorry.
this roughly the same situation that we had during the Perch days?
It's similar. It's similar. The concern or the question with Perch, and Perch didn't have a liquor license. I think it was just beer and
They
wine.
just wanted to
But they-
retail it,
but they
right?
had a
what
beer
was
and-
the Perch? It'd probably helpful.
They did a beer and wine in conjunction with a restaurant. So that was the issue with Perch was restaurants weren't allowed use underneath the zoning code.
Yeah,
For them to serve beer and wine, they had to sell a certain proportion of gross receipts in food service.
I
It
remember
didn't
that.
appear they were meeting that threshold, and that was really the challenge. We did have an institution, the LDS Steakhouse, that was nearby, that did protest
Pretty-
the license.
pretty negative,
And
yeah.
so that was really the situation there. We had a place of worship or a church that was protesting the issuance, and there was a compounding factor that they may not have been hitting their food sales
Yeah.
threshold that they needed to hit.
So will this space be, I guess it's number 2, it's gonna be used for alcohol and food, right?
Correct.
I have no objection.
Well, I guess I don't, given that the neighboring church doesn't have a problem with it, I guess I'm comfortable. Yeah, I think it's okay.
And I guess I can't picture how big 300 feet is. The church off of First.
CJ's.
It's
the
the one
CJ's.
in CJ.
Nope.
No.
Nope,
You're
there's a
asking
second-
about the Moscow United Church, I
Or maybe
believe,
it's Episcopal. Yeah. I
on the
can-
corner of Jackson and First.
Yep.
Correct. It's outside the
Outside.
300-foot distance.
Outside
Okay.
the 300 feet.
It's from the door of the establishment. If you were to go from the Main Street entry to the building, that'd be just within 300 feet.
Yeah.
But this is going to be in the far east side of the building, so the actual premises it's serving is beyond 300 feet from that property.
Copy.
Okay, well, can this one go on consent too?
Again,
First half.
Yes,
So
okay, so I
recommend
think
the
we are all in
approval.
favor of it. So let's go ahead and forward it with the recommendation for approval of the waiver. And then the second part, again, based on the couple steps that need to happen, we would approve the alcohol license, given that.
Yeah. And are we able to, is it normal for that to come back?
No.
Okay.
so the application's before you
Right.
for the license.
Everything
Staff
else
is
is
recommending going
administrative.
ahead and getting that approval now, since we're dealing with the waiver. See, the waiver held up the state's processing of
Mhm.
their application,
Mhm.
which is delaying, the further steps of the city and the county. Since we're talking about it already now, Lori went ahead and put the second action, was just to go ahead and approve the
Gotcha.
license.
Okay.
So we didn't
Okay.
have to take the council's time to come back at a future date.
That makes
It will be
sense.
conditioned upon approval of the background check as well as inspections
Right.
and the state and county license, which is always
Yeah.
often
So
the case.
How big is that space? Do we know how big the space is?
Relatively
No,
small.
it has to be 300 away, but how big is the space where the restaurant and the bar is going to be?
Oh, yeah.
It's relatively small. We haven't performed the inspection and don't have a formal site plan submission to the Community Development Department to perform the alcohol inspection. Based on what they know, they anticipate the occupancy to be fairly low, 10 to 15 people, based on what they understand of the size of the space. to
I
be.
see Andy's here. Are we able
Sure.
to invite
Yeah.
Andy to the?
So
Come
my other
on up,
question-
Andy, if you want to introduce yourself.
Tell us who you
Yeah,
are and where you live.
Because I'm trying to
and that sort of
visualize
thing.
which spot on the second floor it'll be in. So
Yeah, so it's in one of the old apartments. Actually, my wife used to live
Yeah,
there.
cool.
It's 728 square feet. There will not be food.
okay, and is it the space that used to serve as the office building? Like there used to be like administrative office function. There's some interior office sides, and then there's like there's loft, and then there's those office spaces that face Main Street with windows.
Yeah, this is on the east end of the building.
Oh, cool.
So it would be
Alley side.
yeah. If you picture where like Mingle's Kitchen would be, it's
it.
above that.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just, it says alcohol license and restaurant certification. So what part of a restaurant are you going to have in there?
I'm unsure why there's restaurant on there. There's never been a restaurant in the plans for that space.
Because there's a certificate in there that someone signed off on that says,
Oh, for the
No,
newly
that
issued
was-
license, it says restaurant certification and it's left blank. It only says liquor, beer, wine.
Correct.
Inspection
On
on the
our
application.
we did not select the restaurant.
okay,
So it's
Yeah.
probably just a typo by Lori.
okay. I was just wondering how everything was gonna fit
700
in
and-
there at one space. And I
It
thought, okay,
wouldn't. It's
you know,
very
10
small.
people making enough food to make that work. It was really a business plan, but I just-
Microwave. There's a mic.
There's a microwave.
So occupancy, you're thinking 10 to 15 maximum? I mean, that
At 10 to 15, that's the first time I've heard that number for occupancy.
'Cause I guess the state
in-
dictates it by
It's building code based on the size of
Okay.
and whether it's tables and
Public
chairs,
versus-
there's one per 15, or standing room only, which is 1 per 5 square feet. So it depends on how the space is laid
Gotcha.
out. That's something they'll work through with the community development department when they get to that stage of the process.
Do we have a parking issue here?
It's downtown. There's no parking required.
Okay.
Oh.
how do we help them maintain that occupancy guideline? Is that do we then, if the state
They'll-
tells us the building code kind of things, what happens then? Who monitors
No,
that?
our office will determine the occupant load. So the building official, when they go through the
Right.
change of occupancy, they'll assess the use, they'll look at the floor plan, they will come up with an occupant load, it's maximum occupancy, and that'll be posted on site.
Okay. All right. Well, I still think it goes on consent.
Yeah, my last clarifying question. It's an apartment that's getting converted to retail space, yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
My only, it is private property. Everyone's entitled to do what they want to do with private property. I'm a little bit bummed to hear an apartment coming offline because those were such fun apartments to
They
to
were.
live in. So,
They were, yeah.
and I know they've put a lot of work into that building, but yes, I'm comfortable with it going on consent agenda. And I will have to talk to you about how to learn to like whiskey because that's like not my jam. So,
Oh,
So I have a couple of questions.
can work on that.
We should come up with the name.
It's a reference to whiskey and alcohol culture, a beverage that would be served neat.
Okay.
which is when you do have ice or you don't have ice. I don't
No
know.
ice,
No
yeah.
ice. It's like,
And does Mingles have a liquor license? Okay.
So and this is, I think I learned why we always have people tell us who they are. Who are you?
oh yeah.
And why are we talking to you? Please.
My name's Andy.
Andy.
Andy Severson.
Okay.
I'm the manager of NEAT.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome.
Or you will be when it opens.
I'm currently working in that capacity now, but we are not open.
Awesome.
All the nuts and
And
bolts.
do we have any estimate in terms of when it will open?
Pending licenses being issued.
Right.
And will people
Right.
come in from the back alley or will they come in from the front? Just out of curiosity.
They'll have to come in the main building entrances. There's one on First Street, and then there's also one on the Main Street side.
Okay.
All right.
So-
Consent it is. Thank you very much, Andy.
thank you.
Appreciate you. Okay. Any reports for us, sir?
There are no reports this afternoon.
All right. With that, we are 37 minutes and 53 seconds adjourned.
Amen.
Amen.